This may be hard for some of you to hear, but marriage is not and never was meant to be a lifelong love affair. That's the perspective of Joseph Campbell, the academic and master of comparative mythology, best known for his influence on George Lucas and Star Wars. In just a few seconds, you'll hear from Joseph Campbell in his words from the book The Power of Myth on what marriage represents, why marriage has declined in America, and what the consequences of misunderstanding marriage really are. Let's dive in.
Marriage, for example. What is marriage? Well, the myth tells you what it is. It's the reunion of separated duad. Originally, you were one. Now you are two in the world. But the recognition of the spiritual identity is what marriage is. It's different from a love affair. It has nothing to do with that. It's another mythological plane of experience. When people get married because they think it's a long-time love affair, they'll be divorced very soon. Because all love affairs end in disappointment. But marriage is a recognition of a spiritual identity. If we live a proper life, if our minds are on the right qualities in regarding the person of the opposite sex, we'll find our proper male or female counterpart. But if we're distracted by certain sensuous interests, we'll marry the wrong person. By marrying the right person, we reconstruct the image of the incarnate God. And that's what marriage is.
The right person? How does one choose the right person?
Your heart tells you. It ought to.
Your inner being.
That's the mystery.
You recognize your other self.
Well, I don't know. But there's this flash that comes, and something in you knows that this is the one.
If marriage is this reunion of the self, with the male or female grounding of ourselves, why is it that marriage is so precarious in our modern society?
Because it's not regarded as a marriage. I would say that if the marriage isn't the first priority in your life, you're not married. The marriage means the two of you are one. The two become one flesh. If the marriage lasts long enough, and if you are acquiescing constantly to it instead of individual personal whim, then you come to realize that that is true. The two really are one.
One not only biologically, but spiritually.
Primarily spiritually. The biological is a distraction that may lead you to the wrong identification.
Then the necessary function of marriage, perpetuating ourselves in children, is not the primary one.
No, that's really just the elementary aspect of marriage. There are two completely different stages of marriage. First is the youthful marriage, following the wonderful impulse that nature has given us in the interplay of the sexes biologically in order to produce children. But there comes a time when the child graduates from the family and then the couple is left. I've been amazed at the number of my friends who in their 40s or 50s go apart. They've had a perfectly decent life together with the child, but they interpreted their union in terms of their relationship through the child. They did not interpret it in terms of their own personal relationship to each other. See, marriage is a relationship. When you make the sacrifice in marriage, you're sacrificing not to each other, but to unity in a relationship. The Chinese image of the Tao, with the dark and light interacting, that's the relationship of yin and yang, male and female, which is what a marriage is. And that's what you have to become when you have married. You're no longer this one alone, your identity is in a relationship. Marriage is not a simple love affair, it's an ordeal, and the ordeal is the sacrifice of ego and a relationship in which the two have become one.
So marriage is utterly incompatible with the idea of doing one's own thing.
It's not simply one's own thing, you see. It is, in a sense, doing one's own thing, but the one isn't just you. It's the two of you together as one. And that's a purely mythological image, signifying the sacrifice of the visible entity for a transcendent good. This is something that becomes beautifully realized in the second stage of marriage, what I call the alchemical stage of the two experiencing that they are one. If they're still living the way they were in the primary stage of marriage, they'll go apart when their children leave. Daddy will fall in love with some little nubile girl and run off, and Mother will be left with an empty house and heart, and will have to work it out on her own, in her own way.
That's because we don't understand the two levels of marriage.
You don't make a commitment.
We presume to. We make a commitment for better or for worse.
And that's the remnant of a ritual.
And the ritual has lost its force. The ritual that once conveyed an inner reality is now merely form. And that's true in the rituals of society and in the personal rituals of marriage and religion.
How many people before marriage receive spiritual instruction as to what the marriage means? You can stand up in front of a judge and in 10 minutes get married. The marriage ceremony in India lasts 3 days. That couple is glued.
You're saying that marriage is not just a social arrangement, it's a spiritual exercise.
It's primarily a spiritual exercise, and the society is supposed to help us have the realization. Man should not be in the service of society. Society should be in the service of man. When man is in service of society, you have a monster state. And that's what's threatening the world at this minute.